Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Cheer up, David. The sun's shining.
He's got physio by phone later.
Physio by phone.
I've got a physio appointment for my poorly knee, and it's by phone. Now, one of our church members, the vice chair of the PCC in Bedminster, he had a phone appointment, which was then turned into a video call the following week. And so he got his computer on his desk. The physio asked him to lie on the floor and do an exercise, but couldn't see him because his computer was still on the desk.
Do you want me to come round and hold the phone for you so you can do your exercises better?
No, I can put it at this stage. I may need you to come around next week to hold the camera.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
As you lie on the floor. It was the same when I did online Pilates all through lockdown, that you had to wedge your laptop sort of on, if you were lying on the floor, she had to be able to see you head to toe lying on the floor. So there was quite a lot of angling of laptops that had to happen. And then
well, you see,
we got used to it.
My real concern is that if Albert, the physio, says, could you get on the floor and do a so-and-so exercise, I won't be able to get up again.
Well, at least he'll be able to assess your mobility issues like that, won't he?
The whale effect may come in.
What's the weirdest thing? I was about to ask you, what's the weirdest thing you've done online, Chris? I don't know if I want to know the answer.
He could be arrested. Please be careful.
Sorry, I was thinking about physio and Pilates and things like that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely.
You know, I asked that at APCM the other night. Is there anything I do that I shouldn't do anymore? And I said, no, I haven't asked that.
Did you get any answers before you withdrew the question?
No, they all stayed very quiet, very polite.
I think next to, well, I haven't done the, I mean, I may not have to do the video call. They may automatically say you're such a wonderfully fit and agile person, you know, just bend your knee occasionally or so. I don't know what Albert will say. But I think the most wonderful thing we ever did online had to be that Easter morning when we did the lighting of the bonfire and the candles and you were singing the Exultet outside your son's window.
I think that was a triumph of live streaming, and it was beautiful in its
because the one and only time our team did live streaming, I think.
I don't think we could ever compete with the joy of what that was. It was best just to leave it.
And leave it. You can't replicate it. Exactly.
Anyway,
there we are.
There we go. Well, that's joyful. It's weird to think we've passed the second anniversary of lockdown and, you know, the beginning of all of this. And here we all are.
That picture I put up last night of the notice on the gate with the door locked, it still saddens me to this day. It really does, that we were forced to lock. I mean, we all know why and all the things and whatever, but it still saddened me that people at the time when they needed, whether we agree that buildings are that important, but for some people we know they are, that they couldn't go and just be, etc., etc. But there we are. 2 years gone by. I miss the walks.
I miss the walks.
Yeah.
I miss lunch with my family every day.
Yeah. The peace.
That was lovely.
The peace and quiet. The creating of an hour or more of reading every day. I miss all those type of things. But the walks are very special because we tended to go out at the same time, either just after lunch or early evening. We used to see the same people on their walks and you'd wave from a distance, people you never knew, but you got to know them over 3 months. Yeah.
So it's wrong to, well, is it wrong? It's weird to feel nostalgic, isn't it? Because, you know, I think it's really odd in the Southwest, you know, that at that point we were very fearful, but in fact there was very little COVID where we are. At the moment, it's completely rife in the Southwest, and yet, and oddly, there are no restrictions at all, which is.
But thankfully, the strain of COVID isn't as merciless as the first one, I don't think.
No, but it's I'm wondering if I'll have any Messy Church volunteers left by Saturday. I'm not sure I will. But there we are. I mean, left as in to come to church, not as in departed this life. But.
True. Well, Sunday is Mothering Sunday, not Mother's Day. Mothering Sunday.
And I'm sure you're going to tell us the difference after we've had our Bible reading, David.
It's spelled differently.
One's got a suffix.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Joe. Being a teacher, you know all about suffixes, obviously.
Excellent. Should we read? Oh no, pause.
So today we're doing the reading of the Annunciation from Luke chapter 1, starting at verse 26. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary. And he came to her and said, "Greetings, favoured one, the Lord is with you." But she was much perplexed by his words and pondered what sort of greeting this might be. The angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favour with God. And now you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High, and the Lord God will give to him the throne of his ancestor David. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end." Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I am a virgin?" The angel said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the child to be born will be holy. He will be called Son of God. And now your relative Elizabeth, in her old age, has also conceived a son, and this is the 6th month for her, who was said to be barren. For nothing will be impossible with God." Then Mary said, "Here am I, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word." Then the angel departed from her. Only 9 months to Christmas.
Exactly. It's interesting, the Annunciation, which is celebrated on the 25th of March, so actually on Friday this week before Sunday. But and yes, 9 months before Christmas, which of course we've got no idea of the dating of either of those events. So it's just a random thing, isn't it? But it's funny because sometimes it hits other festivals. And a couple of years ago, it came on Good Friday, which is a very poignant. Obviously, you celebrate Good Friday, but it's very poignant to think about the conception of Jesus at the point where we're actually thinking about his death and that connection between life and death. And now this time it's sort of hitting around the same time as Mothering Sunday, which is another very poignant festival to remember the kind of gift that Mary gave of bearing a child, which, you know, without her willing participation, it would have been a different story, wouldn't it?
So, David, are you going to tell us all about Mothering Sunday and Mother's Day?
Yeah, Mother's Day is a secular day to sell lots of cards and flowers and chocolates. Mothering Sunday is a day celebrated by the church to give thanks for mothers and to allow people to remember the proper reason why we should be giving them just a daffodil rather than spending £12 on a bunch of roses.
Well, do you know, I'm quite happy with a card, bunch of flowers and a box of chocolate.
You would be.
What about a mother church?
Yes, returning to their mother church.
Well, it's very important in Bedminster, you see, because the church in Bedminster is actually has the dedication of the Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, so it is the patronal festival.
Mm-hmm.
Only 27 Anglican churches are dedicated to the Annunciation in England.
So do you have a big festival on Sunday? Or tomorrow?
We will be. No, we normally celebrate it on the day, but because it's Friday and it's only at a Sunday, people won't come to church twice because you're not allowed to go to church 2 days running or 2 days out of 3, are you? It's illegal.
Oh, that is true, yeah. And you're not allowed to go to a church next door either.
No, that's very true.
Absolutely not. Don't you dare get in a car and drive to church.
No, it is illegal.
We're being rude.
It's also illegal to go to church twice on one Sunday, on the same day on a Sunday. I've discovered that.
Except some people broke that rule last week by coming to their prayer vigil in the evening, having been to church in the morning. So hooray for the lawbreakers is what I say.
Yeah, lawbreakers, yeah. So Mothering Sunday is very special, but it's like so many other things. It's been taken over by the by businesses, hasn't it? It's a shame because it's always been very special, and we should be keeping that. And you can celebrate Mother Church. I don't think anybody in the Bedminster team would accept that Bedminster is the Mother Church for the area, although one or two people believe it should be. I will remind people maybe whenever I go to Burstock after I've been to Bedminster that the cathedral is their Mother Church. They may like to pray for them that day.
I often think about Mother Church being the church that I grew up in.
Yeah.
Or, the one I would return if I was to name the church that, where my faith was nurtured. And that's interesting. I mean, so that would mean I'd have to go back to St Barnabas, Pitshanger Lane in Ealing, West London. Where would you go, Chris, for your mother church where your faith was nurtured?
Well, my mother church where the faith was nurtured would probably be my tiny little village of St Paul's Filly in North Devon, where I went to Sunday school when I was 3. And with a few little breaks, I was still going to that church at age 45 when I left to train for ordination. Amazing.
And David, what about you?
I would have to return to the church known as the Old Church in Smethwick. The Old Church had never been dedicated to any saint. It was just known as the Old Church. And the vicar there, when I was a child, used to say they'd run out of saints by the time they got to us.
No more holy people to be found anywhere.
And it was the first church. The first church built in that area of Smethwick, and it was built to the Chapel of Ease, because if you lived in Smethwick, you had to travel to Harborne in Birmingham, which was 6 miles away. That's where the parish church of St Mary's in Harborne was, and you had to travel there. And so then they built a church. A lady called Dorothy Parks gave money to build the church because she was travelling 4 miles before she got to where the church was built in Smethwick. Never mind going another 4 miles on to Harborne. And in Victorian times, so 700 years after the church in Smethwick had been built, they built a daughter church 3 miles away. There we are. Very good history. So the mother church for Bearwood is certainly the Smethwick Old Church, but the mother church for Smethwick Old Church is Harborne.
There you go. And the reason I say it is because the thing I'm pondering about this Mothering Sunday is, particularly because we're using the Annunciation readings, is that, one of the big things about mothering is the fact that you're nurturing a child. And for some of us are mothers because we literally grew a child inside our bodies. But some of us, and me included, are also mothers to children who we didn't nurture internally, but that we have had that kind of influence and role in nurturing and growing and helping grow these children. And I just think there's a real analogy to me of faith and the fact that it's not something you do in isolation. Bringing up children is hard to do in complete isolation. It takes a village is the adage, but we use our families, our friends, the children's godparents all have an influence. But it's all about this kind of nurture and growing. And the thing that really strikes me about that is about our faith and who nurtures our faith and how is our faith growing. And is there a point where we feel our faith is grown? And I would argue no. There's a point where we need to take responsibility for our own growth of faith because perhaps we've moved on from Sunday school or youth group or whatever it is. And I just want to really encourage people to think about our faith and our faith growing and our faith being nurtured and our faith continuing to flourish and what efforts we need to do to enable that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's where I'm going with the Annunciation this year, I think.
I mean, I think we all know, and we spoke very briefly about mothering somebody is always very difficult in many ways because for every person that has had the privilege of being a mother in whatever aspect as you've described, yes, it's always going to be a joyful time. But last week I was at one of our churches where I knew that one of the congregation there desperately wanted to be a mother and couldn't be. And I had the reading for the Annunciation, and you're suddenly thinking, what do I say that doesn't upset this? But when the person is very sensible, but it's very difficult. And our wonderful colleague Elfrida never liked Mothering Sunday. She wasn't married. She hadn't had children. She found it very, very difficult. And there are those, of course, who've had children that have died. And so it's a very difficult thing to hit the right spot. Yes, there's an element of joy and whatever about it, but there's also the acknowledgement that for some it's been a very sad and unhappy experience in life.
I think it's also interesting about the whole metaphor of parenting in our relationship with God, because we talk about God as Father, which is a metaphor, and we may as well talk about God as Mother, because if we're all made in the image of God, therefore God represents male and female. So to gender God is slightly anachronistic anyway. But absolutely, I agree that the whole image of parenting can be a really difficult subject, but also the issue of being parented. So it's very tough if you've lost your mum, or you had a bad relationship with your mum, or you had no mum, or there's all of that imagery. And it really strikes me that we rightly get very concerned and compassionate on Mothering Sunday about how we communicate these things using that metaphor of mothering. But in fact, for the other 365 days of the year, we're all left with the metaphor of God as Father, which can be equally troubling and equally hard. So, yeah, those metaphors are very difficult, aren't they, to try and they are only a picture. They're only one way of describing our relationship with God as parent and child. And I think, perhaps we need to be a bit more bold in saying, if that metaphor is difficult for you, what other metaphor might work better? Is that heresy?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was trying to think a few years back. I've always been dead against Father's Day. I don't remember there being a Father's Day when I was very young. Because I think Father's Day really came into its own in the late 70s, early 80s, pushed again by the card industry. And my father was certainly very against it. He said, I don't need gifts and presents. I know you think of me every day. And I say that to my daughters. I don't need great presents or gifts. Just remember me or say hello. That and I find it very difficult. I don't remember when Father's Day really came in the way that it does. And is it time for perhaps to have a Parents' Day and never mind Grandparents' Day? I'm sorry, I do get whatever. And I mean, I saw a card you in the shop. I was in the shop in Bridport last week, and I saw a shop for Mothering Day, for Mothering Sunday, and he said, "To mother from the dog for Mothering Sunday." And I'm sorry, dog lovers, and I am one. In fact, the dog is asleep here. She's listening to me.
But doesn't Lady Rowe regard you now as her dad? Because you're her parent. You feed her. You look after her. You take her for walks.
You regard me as the person who takes her for a walk and feeds her.
I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I struggle. I know, and there's all that kind of consumerism around it. But there is this way of describing our dependency on God.
Yeah.
And God's partnership with us, because that's the other thing that really strikes me from the Annunciation readings is, God, whether we believe that it happened the way it happens in Luke, but, God requires a human partnership to enact the incarnation. Mm. And so there's something about, and in fact, the whole nature of God is about partnership with his creation, with their creation. and so it's this, I think it's a really big kind of issue about how we define the relationship between God and humanity. And the metaphor of parenting is one aspect of it. But I wonder if we dwell on that bit too much. Sorry, Chris, you're about to say something.
I thought I might get a word in edgeways somewhere. To me, I think we can use. It doesn't really matter what words we use. You know, as a parent, a mother, a father. Well, our parents are the ones who teach us to grow up.
Mm.
You know, it's. I mean, I once said. I think I said it to our children. You know, it's realistically. You're teaching your children to be independent and grown up and to leave home and stand on their own 2 feet.
Mm.
And that's a successful parent, which is, in a lot of ways, the giving away of a bride at a wedding is such a proud moment for a dad, not because it's sexist, but it's a parent saying, job done. You know, I'm proud.
Mm.
Look what, you know, I'm proud of my daughter who's now setting up home on her own to carry on family life and start the cycle all over again, sort of thing. And I think that's really proud. But then I think when it gets to spirituality, you know, if we look at that as our parents teaching us how to grow up, teaching us how to cook, how to sew, how to clean, how to dress ourselves, etc., how to have good manners and all these sorts of things. If we put that then into a spiritual context, we all need spiritual guides.
Mm.
You know, if you were to ask who's, you know, you said, why was your most influential church your sort of mother church?
Mm.
But if you were to ask, well, which person would you say has had the most influence on your spiritual life in all your history, who set your feet down on that road for you to stand up and read your Bible every day, to pray and to seek your own relationship with God, that puts life on a different plane. And I can put that down, I can probably reduce that down to 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, and me too.
And those people I would regard as my ultimate spiritual guides all the way back when I was 16, 17. And to me, that's one of the celebrations of where we need to go with Mothering Sunday. Maybe that's what I'll talk about on Sunday.
Yeah. Well, and exactly that same imagery, isn't it? Is that we, you know, our children are not ours to keep and to hold on to. Our children are God's gift to the whole world, and so therefore we kind of we look after them for a while, but then we dispatch them into the world. And sometimes we preach on Hannah at Mothering Sunday, where she prays earnestly for this child that she so longs for, and then she returns him immediately to God. Samuel's given up to God, and that, I just find that quite astounding. But that is the relationship that I think we're supposed to have with our children, which is to, you know, to hold them and nurture them, and then off we go. And maybe that is exactly that same relationship that God requires of our spiritual relationship, and exactly that thing, those mentors who guide us. And I love that imagery you said about setting our feet on the path and then equipping us to go, and then we go and hopefully perform that service to others.
Yeah, I think, perhaps to bring it to an end, because I'm conscious you've got another appointment in 5 minutes' time, Reverend Neely. I always remember when we first had Alice, our oldest daughter, and as you do as new parents, you're attentive to every second and cry that goes on. And she was in a cot in the nursery, and we were downstairs. And we heard her cry, and both Jane and I fought to get up the stairs, but, as you do as new parents, to get there first. And Jane settled her down in the cot again. And we stood at the door, me being perhaps goggle-eyed still at that point, and looking at Alice. And Jane said, our job is not to hold on to her, even at this stage, but to let her go. And it's quite harsh, but it's absolutely true, as Chris says. That's what it's partly about. So that Anna bit, to a degree, is taking it a step even further, instantly responding to God's need. And I mean, the way relationship develops with our children. I mean, we've moved house now 4 times. I've tried to move without telling our girls where we've gone, but they keep on finding us. so there we are.
It's a lifelong thing. Well, and of course, Mary, that's exactly, I know we're running out of time, but that's what Mary had to do. She had to nurture this child and then effectively give him up for the rest of the world to do the thing that he was called to do. And
having been told, this son of yours, he's like a sword that's going to pierce your heart, and but yes, the mother instinct in her, she was still there,
and she was still there at the end.
It was.
Yeah, exactly, Chris. Yeah, exactly. And that's what parents.
Not let go. She never went away. She never abandoned him.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there we are, Mothering Sunday. I hope all those who are watching get a suitable posy or something. We'll be giving them away in church. Please come and collect one. Do you remember last year I did all those posies and put them at the gate because we were closed down for Mothering Sunday?
Oh, yes. And the year before, 2020, it was the final service in church. I remember it being absolutely awful.
It was.
It was desperate.
I've got pictures of the posy I put to the church. I wandered down, suddenly thinking we ought to do something because we've been locked down. And people made some posies for me and bought flowers and gave them, and we put them together. I took them down to the church about 9 o'clock and put them with a little note saying, with our blessings from the church. And within 20 minutes, about 40 posies had gone.
Oh, wonderful.
Good.
Well, do worship with us, either in the Egerton and Comers benefice or the Bedminster team over Mothering Sunday. We'd love to see you. Come back to your mother church if it is, or if it's not, come anyway. And we'd love to see you and to celebrate with you. And you can find everything you need to watch on our websites and on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all the other places. But it's lovely to have you with us and lovely to see you, and take care, and we'll see you again next week.
Well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.